A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards, and I'm so glad you've joined us on the program today. Coming up in a matter of moments, Alan Gottlieb going to join us, the executive director of the Second Amendment Foundation. We're going to be talking about the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin case, formerly called New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Corlett. That has now changed because we have a new commissioner of police in New York, and he is the named party in this lawsuit. But we're talking about the Supreme Court case dealing with New York's right to carry, or rather, in New York, the privilege to carry. That is the subject of the lawsuit. New York's draconian, discriminatory, and subjective licensing laws. The Supreme Court going to hear oral arguments in the fall in this case. But before they do that, there is a round of briefings to do. We covered the plaintiff's brief actually last week on bearingarms.com. But now we've got a host of amicus briefs coming in. Wrote about it this morning at bearingarms.com. 26 Republican attorneys general, 25 Republican senators, 170 Republican members of the House of Representatives, all submitting their own briefs. But the Second Amendment Foundation and its sister organization, the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, delivering their amicus briefs to the Supreme Court as well. And again, we're going to talk about that in just a moment with Mr. Alan Gottlieb. But before we do that, do you miss President Trump? A lot of people do, and I'm coming to you with a very special offer that you do not want to miss. Now is your chance to enter to win one of 6 signed photos of President Trump. These were hand-signed by President Trump, and soon one could be hanging up in your house. When President Trump signed these photos, you want to make sure that all of his supporters have the opportunity to win one, and now is your chance. All you have to do is text CAM to 55404 today for your chance to win a beautiful photo of President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, hand-signed by President Trump himself, by texting CAM to 55404 right now. You'll also get exclusive double entry activation for a limited time. Just text CAM, again, that's CAM, to 55404 to have your name entered twice to win a hand-signed Trump photo. Don't want to miss this. Contest ends soon. Paid for by the National Republican Senatorial Committee. All right, so let's begin our conversation with Mr. Alan Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms with maybe the biggest question. How is he feeling right now watching these amicus briefs come in about the prospects of the Supreme Court overturning New York's gun laws? We'll start there. Take a look and a listen. Alan, thanks so much for joining me on the program, sir. It's good talking with you today.
It's always great to be with you, Cam, and your listeners. Thank you.
And I gotta ask, just first off, how are you feeling about the prospects of this case now that we're seeing these amicus briefs come in? And we're going to talk about the Second Amendment Foundation's brief and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms brief specifically. But I mean, it seems like 26 Republican attorney generals, 25 Republican senators, 170 Republican members of Congress. And those are just a few of the briefs that are starting to come in support of the Second Amendment and in opposition to New York's carry laws.
Yeah, I feel really pretty good. I mean, I think there are approximately 46 amicus briefs filed on our side by approximately 75 attorneys representing around 100 individuals and organizational people who have filed. That might be an all-time new Supreme Court record for amicus briefs in any case they've heard. I'm going to have to go back and check. It's really a large number. Now, the other side, of course, get to respond to those briefs and file their own. And of course, when you read our side's brief, it's one-sided, of course.
Right.
And you read it, and it's like, wow, we're going to have a knockout victory. But you still have to read the other side's briefs. But in all honesty, Cam, I don't think the Supreme Court would have taken this case if they weren't going to rule to overturn the New York, ridiculous carry law. And I'm saying that because the lower court judge ruled in favor of New York. The appeals court ruled unanimously in favor of New York. There's no way the Supreme Court would take it and review that if they didn't think those rulings were wrong.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that makes sense. I know there's been, some concern over the framing of the question by the Supreme Court. They slightly tweaked the question that was posed by the plaintiffs' attorneys here, but I think you're right. I think the conventional wisdom is that we have a really good chance here, and certainly gun control activists. I mean, I'm very curious to see what their briefs say as well. But I think it's fair to say that gun control activists are already starting to panic. You're already seeing headlines, talking about if the Supreme Court, does this, that this could be the end of the gun control movement, in essence.
Well, I think that, the sky is falling kind of rhetoric from them. It won't be the end of their movement because they're not going to go away, unfortunately. Right. I think we're going to win. And it doesn't concern me that the Supreme Court tweaked the question before them. They do that a lot of times in a lot of cases. It's not very unusual. Mm-hmm. And I think they wanted to narrow what they want to talk about to the key part of the central part of the issue. Now, the question we face is going to be I think we're going to win, but the question is going to be what they write in the opinion. How far they take it in what direction? Will they talk about standard of reviews and hold Second Amendment issues to significantly heightened scrutiny, like strict scrutiny, for judges to be able to, make rulings at lower court levels? Or will they expand it out, into more areas of carry, or talk more about the rights outside your home with a firearm? So those are the things that are unknown. But we're going to get a victory. The question is how big a victory. And I think we're going to get a pretty decent one.
All right. Fingers crossed that you're right here. Now let's talk about the arguments presented in the briefs from the Second Amendment Foundation and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, where full disclosure, I serve on the board of directors, because you don't want to replicate the same argument. So what angle did the Second Amendment Foundation use to approach this case in their amicus brief?
Well, we basically went through the history of people carrying firearms from the colonial days all the way to the present, to let the Supreme Court know that it's not unusual for people to carry firearms for self-protection, and that historically courts have upheld the right to carry firearms in the early periods of our republic. And if you want to go again to the text of the Second Amendment and the founding fathers, comments and quotes and what they were trying to accomplish and talk about with the right to carry and self-defense, that in fact, the right to carry is very mainstream, mm-hmm. And taking it all the way up to present times. And so it gives the court a really good historical perspective on the fact that what New York has done with their law is out of the mainstream.
And then with the Citizens Committee brief, it seems like that focuses more on the fact that there are times where folks need to be able to be their own first responder. Not only do we have the right to do so, but during times of emergencies, there are acute needs for us to be able to protect ourselves and our loved ones.
Yeah, we raised that, and particularly in the context of self-defense and threats to individual people and the right to protect oneself and one's family and one's home. And we did that because of the fact we know the other side in their amicus briefs that they can't really argue the law or the Constitution. They're going to be emotional and they're going to try to talk about guns are evil, people die because people have guns, the more people carrying guns out on our streets, the more crime we're going to have. And what the committee brief really shows is the fact that we have, not more crime because of this, but the fact is there's a need in colonial periods, and in the early republic, things weren't so safe. There was a lot of crime in the streets. Founding fathers understood people needed to be able to defend themselves. And we give, examples, all the way through time of people needing firearms. And then maybe now we need them more today than ever before when you're looking at skyrocketing crime rates and you're looking at, strife in the streets and riots, and political unrest and distrust of government and defunding of the police. It's leading people more and more that they have to be their own first responder.
Yeah, absolutely. We just had a story, I believe, on yesterday's Cam & Company about a dad in Houston who his wife wakes him up in the middle of the night, says, "Honey, I think there's somebody in the backyard." He looks out the window, and sure enough, there's a stranger peeking in the window of his 6-month-old daughter's bedroom. So he goes and he grabs his gun. He holds the guy at gunpoint. He calls 911. Alan, he had to wait 47 minutes for the Houston Police Department to arrive after telling them I'm holding this guy at gunpoint. I mean, that's a pretty high priority. But, we've got staffing issues around the country. We've seen a lot of cities just simply declare that the police need to pull back in their services. And that does place a bigger burden on all of us, I believe, to take not only our right to keep and bear arms seriously, but also to take our responsibility to protect ourselves and our families more seriously.
Yeah, I saw your story on that. It was excellent, and I wish it almost happened like a week earlier, so we could have included it
right?
in the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep our Arms brief, because those are the kinds of things we pointed out. We pointed things out from the early days, and a good example was when Ben Franklin was in Europe. People thought he was trying to negotiate, the stamp tax against the United States. So they went to attack his wife while he was gone, and she had to call people with firearms to come to protect her while he was out of the country. All the way up to modern things like the example you gave, which we put in the briefs as well, showing the fact that, citizens basically are their first responders, and police don't get there in time. And when they do, it's usually to fill out paperwork. That's
right. Absolutely. And, I got to tell you, I mean, as far as stuff that I wish had come out just a little bit earlier, there's a study that just came out from the university, I believe it's Loyola University, Chicago. And they looked at the gun licensing laws in Illinois. This does not directly correlate to New York because Illinois is a shall issue state, New York is a may issue state. But I was fascinated by this, Alan. They found that of all of the arrests and convictions in the state of Illinois for every firearm-related offense over the last decade, 72% were simply for possessing a firearm without a license. So three-quarters of all of these, supposed quote-unquote gun crimes are mere possessory offenses. You're carrying a gun without a license that you may not have been able to obtain in Illinois 10 years ago. And I would imagine that the same thing is true in New York State as well, that rather than stopping violent criminals, these laws are preventing average Americans from being able to exercise their constitutional rights.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out that in Illinois, because I just want to toot our own horn a little bit. The reason why Illinois is a shall issue state now for carry is the Second Amendment Foundation's lawsuit in Moore versus Madigan that basically knocked out the ban on carry in the state of Illinois and forced them to put in a shall issue. And also the case before the U.S. Supreme Court that we're talking about could not have been filed if it weren't for the fact that the Second Amendment Foundation also in the state of Illinois won McDonald versus Chicago at the U.S. Supreme Court, where they incorporated the Second Amendment through the 14th Amendment, making it applicable to all states and cities, which then allows us to sue the Supreme Court against New York State. So I would like to toot our horn because the Second Amendment Foundation basically built the founding building blocks for the foundation to be able to challenge these laws and win.
Absolutely. And listen, it's one of the reasons why we love talking with you, and we appreciate all of the work that the Second Amendment Foundation does, along with the sister organization, the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. Folks can read this amicus brief, by the way, actually both the SAF and the CCR-KBA brief, and some other ones. I believe that I think they're all up there at the Supreme Court's website. We'll provide the link for you in the text of the story. But Alan Gottlieb, as always, my friend, thank you so much for coming on the program today. And I know we'll be in close communication here between now and oral argument time in the Supreme Court.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Cam.
All right. Talk to you soon. Alan Gottlieb joins us from the Second Amendment Foundation here on Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. Appreciate Mr. Gottlieb joining us on the program and look forward to having him back again very soon. Now let's turn our attention to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there with a story out of Jackson, Mississippi. There's a headline. It's a disgrace. Father of homicide victim blames judges for not locking up his daughter's alleged killer. Spurgeon Banyard is this gentleman's name. Said he was planning for his oldest daughter to take over the family business, and recently ended up having to plan for her funeral. Kaylin Banyard was killed June the 30th, and her dad says she was going to graduate from Hines Community College with an early child care degree. We were grooming her to take over the family business once my wife stepped away. They opened the Foundation First Development Center about 6 or 7 years ago. The daycare center, lifelong dream for the family. And again, they were hoping that their daughter could take over. But instead, she was shot and killed. And now her parents are upset because her alleged shooter, Terrence Young, was out on bond in connection with multiple felony charges when the shooting took place. He said, quote, the dad said, quote, to see his criminal record being read out in court, it is a failure with the judges in Hinds County. Banyard said if the judges had done their jobs, he wouldn't have been able to murder my daughter. Just like the governor said, part of Jackson's problem is the judges. Criminals commit acts and get bonds, and they're out on bond, still committing crimes. Kaylin's mother, Katrina, said the day that Kaylin was murdered, I went to her house. As we sat there talking, she mentioned those charges and said, Mama, I don't know what JPD's doing. She said, I gave everything on him, his address, his mom's name, everywhere he could possibly be, and they've not picked him up. Yeah, so this wasn't some random circumstance. Authorities believe that Banyard was targeted by a guy who should have been behind bars, but instead was let loose. And Live 5 News in Jackson, Mississippi says of the 32 people arrested for murder this year, at least 13 of them are repeat offenders. 6 of those offenders were out on bond when they were arrested again. 3 were on probation or supervised release, and 3 others had wrapped up their sentences. Court records for another juvenile defendant not available on the electronic court's website. But again, you've got a preponderance of murder suspects in Jackson, Mississippi, well known to authorities. Many of them, again, out on bond at the time that they are accused of killing somebody. And yet again, what do we hear from Democrats in Jackson, Mississippi? We got to get rid of open carry. That's what the mayor of Jackson said last year. Tried to ban open carry, as a matter of fact, despite clear state law saying that he couldn't do so. Democrats would rather blame the guns than the problems in the criminal justice system, which are readily apparent to those of us who cover this on a regular basis. And finally, well, not finally, we've still got our good deed of the day, but our armed citizen story of the day from Houston, Texas, where a gentleman ended up in a shootout with car thieves after he saw them breaking into some vehicles. ABC 13 with the story. It happened over the weekend. 3 guys breaking into a car in the neighborhood. Resident said he got into his truck and confronted them. Resident, by the way, did not want to be identified. Said, I started honking to tell them I know they're breaking into that car. And at that point, they turned back and I did the same thing to light up the street. Meaning, put his headlights on. About halfway down the street, he says they pull out guns and they start shooting. Now, another resident in the area had also seen the trio of guys breaking into the car, and he had called 911 before the first shots were fired. The resident said he pulled out his own gun and started shooting back at the armed car thieves. He said, they chased me all the way down the street to the walking trail. He said, I can't believe all 3 of these kids had guns. Apparently, nobody was hit in the exchange of gunshots, though at least 1 vehicle was damaged. No word on a description of the suspects involved. So far, no arrests have been made. But again, with crime on the rise in Houston, Texas, and the Democrats in control of that city, laying the blame on legal gun owners and the rise in gun sales, stories like this are going to become more common as residents choose to exercise their Second Amendment rights to protect themselves. We have actually covered, I think that's the 3rd armed citizen story in Houston, Texas in the past 3 weeks. And those, again, are just the stories that are actually making the local news. All right, finally today, our good deed of the day, a off-duty officer from Stockton, California, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing to save 2 people from a car that had crashed and burst into flames. That's the officer, Mark Afanasov, I believe is how you pronounce it. Apologies, officer, if I'm butchering your last name. He and his wife were actually in their car. They were just driving down the road in Rancho Cordova, California, when they saw this crash. Afanasov said one of the cars involved immediately caught fire, so he stopped what he was doing and rushed over to save lives. He said, quote, I realized I had to go there and help because there was nobody else around. I've never seen anything like it. I've never been a part of anything like that. But the only thing I could think of was there are people in that car. I've got to get them out. I can't let them burn in that car. So apparently the man involved in the crash was able to get out on his own. Afanasov was able to help a female passenger escape the burning vehicle. He said, I feel like God put us in that position for a specific reason. This is just something that's a part of me to help somebody out, especially something like this when I'm the only one there. Says he doesn't consider himself a hero. He said, I think every officer, firefighter, paramedic I know would have done the same thing I did given the circumstances. And maybe that's true, but it was him in those circumstances. And so in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Mark Afanasov from Stockton, California, we thank you, sir, for your very good deed. And as always, want to thank you for being a part of the program today. Don't forget to check out bearingarms.com throughout the day for even more of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. Also, don't forget to, if you would like, we certainly do appreciate it, you can become a VIP subscriber at Bearing Arms. All you have to do, go to bearingarms.com/subscribe. Use the promo code GUNS. You'll get 25% off of your VIP membership. You will also get exclusive analysis, commentary. I wrote a piece on Tuesday that I would encourage you to check out about a new study showing that these restrictive gun licensing laws, like the ones being challenged in New York State, actually do more harm than good. And that's the type of stuff that you'll get when you sign up and become a VIP member. You'll also be supporting programs like this one. So, again, we really do appreciate your support. We'll see you back here tomorrow with more of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. But until then, be well, be safe, and be free.